Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Got a great guest lined up here for us, folks. Another person from the Electric Universe theory stuff. One of my favorite topics to discuss, and we've had a lot of guests on here along that subject matter. So really looking forward to today's conversation. Sitting in the hot seat with me as usual, none other than the Gray Wizard of Historical Knowledge himself, Mr. Eric Smith. How are we today, Eric?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Matt.
Hey, that's a really standard answer out of you this time.
It is. It happens. There are days that are standard days.
When we just got to go with the non-existential type answer there. Yeah.
Nothing's happened yet.
Joining us on the line, Robert Hawthorne. Like I said, he comes from the Electric Universe, and he's a gentleman that I've had the pleasure to listen speak and on some of these conference calls and things that they do together in this group. So I asked him to come be on the show and kind of give us the rundown of the Electric Universe as he sees it. He's agreed to do so, and he's joining us on the line. How you doing there, Robert?
I am well. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, no problem, buddy. So I kind of set this up, right? I mean, obviously you are a participant in this, and so how do we describe this sort of community to people? We see there's this wrapper that we put around it called Electric Universe theory, right? Or at least that's the way I've interpreted it, and I certainly don't want to be considered an expert on this subject matter because I'm fairly new to it. But if you were going to kind of put a wrapper around this community, what would that be? Or how do you see that?
Primarily, Electric Universe theory is an interdisciplinary movement that is challenging the standard theory to everything, like their cosmology based on gravity. That it's primarily functioned, as the way we see it, is electromagnetism is the driving force to everything, all the way down from the atomic structure. We have some people that are developing models for atoms, and we also have it involved in biological functions. And then my focus is more on geology. And then we have the others that are like Hawthorne here on the pioneers that are focusing more on the physics of the universe itself, all the way up to the macro level.
Now, geology would play a major role in this, right? Because that would be the physical evidence of the theory, correct? Is that kind of how that fits together? Right.
Yes. So everybody's trying to put in their own little part, and they're also feeding off of each other and their input. So it's very, like I said, interdisciplinary and a very friendly setting, because we're not like attacking each other's work or standoffish just because we don't know much about somebody's discipline, as like it's known in the standard setting as we know it. People don't really talk much, and like chemists and geoengineers don't speak too much in their reports.
So
as far as I know, yeah. It's that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking. I was talking with somebody else about this on another show, and they were saying that it wasn't that they didn't believe in gravity, but that they felt that it had a much smaller portion of what was going on in the universe than that people attribute it to it. And I was wondering, right. Is that how you feel?
Some do say that. Some say that the gravity is so weak of a force that it's so insignificant that you really shouldn't consider it. However, there are works that say that in the solar system it works just fine. And, I'm kind of like learning both of those. So I haven't really discerned for myself what yet, even though I've made, when I got, into the Electric Universe, I've made several posts where I got braggish and, to people and just like, you guys are nuts, and thinking that gravity is, is it, if you can't even get to the galactic level, you got to invent things. Then I just threw it to the trash right there. But then they showed me that, it does work somewhat in the solar system, that it needs the third, like with Gareth from Seed of Pattern, he showed that there's somehow that there's a correlation of both, and it needs to be looked at. So I'm looking into that more often. So it was I've evolved myself in the development of since I've come into the Electric Universe. So
Okay, yeah, I've heard that theory too. I think they call it chameleon gravity, where the gravity is different in different spots of the universe, and I think that that's what Gareth
Yep.
was talking about when we
right.
briefly talked about that.
And I
But
still think that has a lot to do with the similarities of the gravitational law and Coulomb's law, since if you just switch K and G, you have the same equation. So I think there's something kind of a relationship there.
It's definitely a
So,
mathematical relationship for sure. Which
right.
right. So that kind of makes sense that you should look that direction. It's kind of a sign. It's pointing says here. You know. No, and it's interesting because it's the electric universe theory. This is an electric universe law or whatever.
Nope.
And this is what I've found most fascinating about this community, yourself included, is being an outside observer. Because in a lot of ways, I still kind of consider myself to be someone that's almost sort of looking in to this community that all these awesome people have given me the chance to kind of come in and be able to, talk with them and discuss theories and ideas. But inside this community, in that respect, you had mentioned, it's not a community of people trying to trash each other in any way. What I actually see is ample consideration among the players to try to understand what someone else is sort of either getting at or proposing or whatever. So it is a very positive sort of collaborative community in that way.
Right. I agree with that totally.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, they have these regular calls, and out of this sort of nexus is spawning, like you had mentioned, Gareth. He's got that, what's it called, See the Pattern YouTube channel, and there's
Right.
all of this really, really interesting collateral that's coming out of this thing now. But so to walk me down the line of geology, and it's because I see this as like almost like a separate tentacle of the same beast here, right? Kind of idea. And so how does that spawn off of this nexus? What sort of methodology does that turn into?
Well, I guess the basic idea of electric geology theory is that we can challenge the basically the whole geological record, from the way stratification is laid, way fossils are made, way the aging data is recorded, can all be altered by electrical currents. And since we know the lightning occurs almost daily, almost 10,000 strikes per second, they say, if you could find on the Earth, that kind of dynamics never been added into the mathematics of, like I said, aging on the radioactive decay. We have to readjust everything. And since we've been finding out lately with Peter Mungo Jupp's research, he found that there was that incident in Alberta where they were laying high tension wires through a forested area into a service community, which was laid down by a storm. And overnight they shut the power off, but when it came to maintenance of the area, they found that the tree trunks that were cut just 5 years prior, I believe it was 5 years or 5 months, but 5 months prior, they were completely petrified down to the roots just from the wire that fell. So, we know petrification usually takes tens of thousands of years. So there's an example right there that lightning has altered that kind of a process. And so I actually got into the geology aspect of it through my experience with Upheaval Dome in Canyonlands National Park. And we actually, in about the mid-'90s, I actually came across a rock sample that we thought was a meteorite. And at the time, that was when the movies were out, like Deep Impact and Armageddon. They were pretty big,
Right,
on the movie list, big blockbusters. And so we thought we were going to be instantly rich because we had access to like about 80 tons of this rock that we thought was ejected from Upheaval Dome, that we thought was impact. So we actually got in contact with Dr. Eugene Shoemaker, who was credited with the Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet. And we got somebody put us into contact with him because we were just happened to be in the same town that he was speaking at the same time. So we got with him. He actually arranged to meet with us and go to Upheaval Dome to the site and then show us his findings about how it was an impact. And he wasn't in agreement with what the samples that we had. That was sure that he wasn't sure that it was any kind of ejected material. But we had discussions with him at the time, and then went on from there. So our samples went from there to NASA, and they went and did X-ray diffractions on our samples there, and it turned out that they couldn't really conclude that it was of impact or material either, but there was some kind of weird processing going on, because it was like whatever it was has been changed to some sort of glass, that the mineral composition has been.
They call that what, vitrification or something like
exactly.
that? Okay.
Vitrification, yes. And they actually said that it resembles a devitrified glass. So there was some kind of secondary process that they're not aware of that like kind of broke down the glass composition and left it in kind of like a melted bubble form, like it was either shock quenched in its molten form and it didn't really get to do anything smooth like a glassy polished surface. Because it's like when you polish our samples, it's kind of like a semi-gloss is about the best you can get. And where was I?
You were talking about the vitrification of it,
and then it was like bubbles and stuff. So
there
it
was
looked
some other kind of process they left it because it was left of the first of all the mineral composition is a nalcene, which has I can't remember how to pronounce it again, the chemical composition, but it has sodium, aluminum. What was it? I can't remember. Sodium, aluminum. There's water in it, and sodium, aluminum. I can't remember. I have to look it up. I don't have my paperwork with me right now.
No, I understand.
There's some and silicates. Yeah, there's some sodium, aluminum silicate, right. And there's water in it, so an oxygen. So there's some weird kind of chemical composition to it. But what's weird is that the layers in the upheaval dome, we have nalcene samples that match the same colors to every level, in that strata. But and every one of the samples that we sent to us matched up the same concurrent with the nalcene samples, but they look physically different with different color spectrums. So that's why we were going to sell them as art pieces, because they're really pretty.
Okay.
That's why we thought we were going to be rich at first, and then it kind of like the whole impact theory kind of fell through on us. So it sat for like 10 years.
Okay.
And it wasn't until we got exposed with the Electric Universe that I kind of came across the podcast that was from the Thunderbolts project. I think it's titled, if I remember correctly, Electrical Craters versus Impacts. And I think it was Barry Setterfield's episode.
Okay.
And I saw that, and that's like kind of like just binged me right there. I was like, "Oh, that's weird. Craters can be formed by some kind of electrical discharge." Because I'd been familiar with Velikovsky's work since the '90s when I saw the Remembering the End of the World. I had it on VHS tape. I watched it on my VCR player back then, and but I didn't even know that the Electric Universe or Thunderbolts project actually formed as like a society until, like I said, in 2015. So I was just vaguely like a Velikovsky fan in the dark.
I'd never even heard of him until I started talking with you guys, like with Neil and with Ramon and you guys. I had to like go start looking some of these people up, which is sort of what you all are sort of getting at anyway. A lot of you is that there's a lot of scientists and physicists and different people out here that have just been completely disregarded, that we might want to go back and start looking at some of their theories and stuff, right? And he's one of those people.
Since some of their predictions have actually been found to be true. Still, any credit at all or discussion at all about it.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm sorry. So anyway, so you had said that so the concept here now is you sort of had an explanation for this anomaly, for lack of a better word, right? That you guys discovered, correct?
Right. Yes, we because the current theory, if anybody goes down to Upheaval Dome or has been to Upheaval Dome, there's a placard there once you walk up the trail and get to the rim of the dome itself, and you're looking down inward. There's a placard there that has two theories listed on it, and one of them was an old salt dome that like bubbled up, because if you know this salt is less dense than rock, eventually they'll bubble up like a lava lamp, they say, and it gets up there and it's like a salt dome. They call it completely eroded away, with the salt vein being at least 500 meters below, I think, or below the surface, somewhere close to that. And that's their theory, because they found salt plugs in the area somewhere else within the geographic area, not just like football fields away. I'm talking about miles. But that's one theory. And then the other theory, like I said, Gene Shoemaker was more in support of this. They said it was an impact. And the research behind that is they've actually found samples around the dome itself and inside the dome too. I think in one of the papers listed that they found specimens with what's called shatter cones or shocked quartz, which is basically, they say, the only thing that can leave a pattern like that in a quartz crystal is a severe impact to create the pressures and the temperatures to fracture quartz. So that's basically the telltale sign of geological samples, that when they found it as an impact theory. And then once you find shocked quartz in your samples, then people sell it on the markets for meteorite, and they make big bucks. But recent research here, I think it was done in the University of Pennsylvania. They've done under simulations. They've actually hit like a granite slab, which would have been in theory, like I said, computer simulations, but with a lightning bolt set at so many amperes, and they said that it created the same pressures and temperatures to easily shock quartz inside the granite, according to their simulations. So that's some theory there, and then there's also like I said, the rock samples that I have,
Right.
That leads to we know that lightning can vitrify rock samples that it's hit. We've seen photographs. We've heard of fulgurites, and when it hits sand beaches or in deserts, you see it just completely makes a sandy kind of glassy veiny structure, which sometimes are hollowed out. And so all that research there I used that said basically if anybody's familiar with Jacob Gable's work, he demonstrates in a little lab in his house that he has like a little wine bottle that's been capped off with like an electrode on one side and a nail on the bottom is for the anode, and he fills it up with dirt and basically runs a current through the chamber after it's been evacuated the gases and everything, and it actually creates cratering patterns in the dirt itself. Also polygonal ones that we see on other like moons and other celestial bodies, that's evidence there that can show some kind of a mechanism of electrical cratering. So I put some of that into my research, and it all came up with the idea that Upheaval Dome was a massive electrical strike. Now, it may not have been a 3 mile wide lightning bolt,
Right?
Because the crater itself is 3 miles wide. That to say that, suggest that, I wouldn't. I couldn't. There's not much evidence I have right now to support the size of anything electrical. But there's also telluric currents. There could have been something that was massive that did come from the heavens at the time, from a comet passing. In electric universe theory, we know that they're charged bodies, not just bodies of snow and ice. And
I've always been taught. I work in industrial electrical engineering, and so lightning arresting lightning bolts and suppression and this kind of thing is a big deal because it hits factories and then it blows up all of the controllers.
Right.
And then you're not making anything. The factory doesn't make anything without controllers, right? So it's a huge expense. So they put a lot of money into this. And we were always told to regard lightning as a surface event, in that it has a tendency, sometimes when you give it a direct path to ground, it'll choose not to. It's weird. I say choose like it has an intelligence, but this is the way it's explained, is that it actually rides along the surface of conductors and things, which is why it'll weirdly go like across a countertop and then up a cable wire and blow a TV off a wall. And like it'll do really strange things. So to your point about the crater, see, that doesn't surprise, if it is a surface event, which is, like I said, then that makes sense. It's just sort of going where the physics say it can. So if you had a 3 mile wide crater, it doesn't mean the lightning bolt was necessarily even close to that, right?
Oh.
It can go. I mean, it happens at the speed of light, so that these things happen. So, but anyway, I didn't mean to go down that wormhole. It's just
we could go even further if you'd like. I mean, because I've actually kind of been working with Bruce Laybourne, and he actually came out with a paper a few years ago saying that there's a stellar circuit inside the Earth, and he has been researching magnetic anomalies in the mantle, because he used to be a cartographer for the underwater cartographer for the Navy, so he actually is pretty researched in this.
Okay.
So his work was actually, like I said, looking at those magnetic anomalies, and he had found one sitting right underneath the Grand Canyon that it looks like a major volcano underground, and it looks like if there was like a massive electrical current, because we know that volcanoes are associated with electricity.
Yeah,
we've seen volcanic lightning. If that what he calls, I guess, as a hyper volcano, because it would have been bigger than the caldera up at Yellowstone. But if that thing actually had gone off at any given time, it could have carved out the Grand Canyon itself, because it started somewhere around Las Vegas, and it would have carved out the Grand Canyon and the whole entire southwest region, leaving just People Dome as like one of those welder leaders, like where, the arc kind of jumps off and just focuses on one spot for a second, creating a blister. But the whole area would have just got completely zapped. And that could have been an explanation for the entire area, not just the dome itself.
Right.
But that's a whole different paperwork, where it's a different mechanism, because he's getting down into the substructure of the mantle and whatnot.
And so, kind of the rationale behind this, right? Because a lot of people that hear, anytime you talk about the Grand Canyon, they're just going to say, well, yeah, what was it? Is it the Colorado River? Which,
yeah. Right.
Okay, but the big compelling argument for that is, okay, but where's the dirt that it washed away, right? It should all be...
Exactly.
It should, and that's the big. Is that the big kind of, I guess, hang up with the theory that it was just created by erosion?
Yeah, where did it all go? I mean, because it's not down in the
it did
or anything where it washed down. So,
but we can see that with the Mississippi River Delta. You can see that's the erosion and where all the dirt ended up out in the ocean, right? You can see that, but that's the problem with people argue that this theory, and then the backup to that.
Well, in our theory, mostly the electricity is what's carved out the etching, or what lifted the mountains, because you see a lot of the Lichtenberg patterns in mountain ranges and also in riverbeds.
Okay.
That it was actually carved out by lightning or electricity first, and then the water was filled in and then just replaced with the precipitation cycle.
So it was there, sort of, or there was a path there, whatever, and then this ultimately became the lowest path. So this is where the river ended up, sort of theory, versus the river carved all of this out and made all that dirt mysteriously disappear somehow.
Well, it's not really that mysterious. There's another gentleman that does work. His name is David Brown. He's in YouTube under the name Electric Universe Eyes. And what he does is he puts like clay tablets together and clay balls with moisture in them, and then he puts them in between an electrical current. And sometimes you'll see cratering, but you also see like entire pieces of chunks of material just completely vanish, like it was just been almost vaporized or powdered, turned to dust, and it just blown all over the place.
There's actually a process called electric discharge machining.
Exactly.
And that's what it does, is it machine the arcs machine out and you leave what you want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They remove rust like that with electric guns too.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So
they're really cool. Yeah.
This isn't like, you don't have to go out into Buck Rogers land to sort of see this stuff working in, like, for real. This is everyday kind of an ideology here that we accept in very small levels, comparatively speaking, to the Grand Canyon.
Right.
So,
we know that we know electricity is the scalar up to, like, what did he say, 24 level orders of magnitude, or 40 orders of magnitude. So we can find demonstrations of that kind of power almost anywhere. And we do. We just haven't been looking at it with the right eyes, and that's the electric universe theory's argument.
Well, I've heard, and there's a lot of different. I've heard this because I guess the Thunderbolts project is sort of a linchpin in how all of this stuff kind of comes together in a way, or I should say the things that they're proposing is sort of a linchpin that connects all of these different pieces. So I continue to hear these theories about things like massive electrical lightning storms, this kind of thing, that have happened in history or even prehistory. That's where that's not being accounted for. Let's just put it that way, right? It's not being given its just desserts sort of as a consideration. I think that's a better way to explain it. Right. But one of the things I've noticed, however, is that the cause of those lightning storms now, there seems to be multiple theories, because in this particular case, you're saying that, as you understood it, that the theory was that there was a supermassive volcano, and much larger than Yellowstone, that if it had erupted, it would have created this, would have been the release point for this energy that would have created these massive lightning storms, right? Am I getting that close to right?
Well, that could be part of the theory. I mean, it could be anybody's game at that point, but that definitely looks like a magnetic focal point, and there has been some definite destruction to the land above.
Because I've also heard that this energy was actually generated somehow cosmically, either by the sun or that it was coming to us cosmically somehow
that
too.
Could be quite possible. I mean, a major solar flare. I mean, like we had a Blake event or a Charlemagne event where it actually focused into that point. It would have destroyed it from above, going into the core, and then wherever it was distributed through the currents there.
Okay.
Typically, the last time there was a lot of lightning activity, like in typical science, is in the Permian extinction, when there was a lot of volcanoes eruption. And the reason why there was a lot of lightning is because the material that was sent up into the atmosphere by the volcanoes caused a lot of static electricity
because of the particles.
Yeah. And so it charged up the atmosphere more so than normal. So there was a profusion of electrical activity.
So to what he's saying, if there was a super massive volcano,
it would definitely create lightning as a part of it. In fact, even with normal volcanoes that erupt, you see lightning erupting around them for that very reason and stuff. So, I mean, lightning is definitely connected with eruptions and things, and impacts too.
Yep. Anything. So, Robert, it's kind of what you're getting at. Yeah. So it's accepted then. Eric, what you're getting at is that this is accepted that volcanoes cause massive lightning events.
Yeah, I mean, like in the mainstream society or whatever. I don't know how to phrase it.
An enormous ass volcano.
They've also done research now that volcanoes can actually, the volcanic lightning that actually strikes the ash that comes out can actually vitrify the ash into a form of glass.
Yeah, well, in a pyroclastic flow, glass would form too because of the intense heat that would be going on. So a lot of people have been vitrified by pyroclastic flows, like in Herculaneum and Pompeii when Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, April 24th, or sorry, August 24th.
Yeah, he's a history major. So you know.
I'm not going to argue there. I agree with him.
I mean, there's nothing probably quite as scary as watching a superheated, glass-filled, particle-filled, lightning-filled block of energy coming down at you with mass and pressure.
Robert, this would have been a massive feedback loop too, because if you had a supermassive volcano, to Eric's point, that put massive amounts of particulate matter into the atmosphere, that caused static electricity that started causing lightning bolts big enough to etch away the Earth. I mean, all of that discharge from that etching is going to go somewhere. It's going to go up into the atmosphere, right? It would have to. And then that's going to put more particles into the atmosphere, which is going to cause more static. You see what I mean? Like it would be like you set off it would be like a chain reaction, a massive,
Well, I can charge up the atmosphere until it's able to dissipate.
And until it finally the particles get far enough apart that it stops doing that, or whatever, it starts raining or something.
Just decharges back into the Earth.
Holy crap! Okay, so that makes sense. I don't. We're okay. So this is all stemming from this artifact, then, or this anomaly that you guys found. Okay, so what was so you're saying the only thing that kind of puts this in a wrapper that makes sense is to coincide with the theory that there was massive lightning storms, and that this is physical evidence because it's what. When you ask enough questions, it's the one that answers the most of them. Yes,
so that's what I came up with. I mean, if they have a massive crater there, they have specimens of rock samples that have shock quartz material. They also have samples now of vitrified material. However, they haven't. They do have samples out there with craters out there that do have a glassy impact material. They have identified several. However, they couldn't associate this sample to those as either, and that's verified by Dr. Bill Cassidy of the University of Pittsburgh. He has actually been to Antarctica 16 different times, or 17 times, excuse me, prior to us meeting him, and just to go down on the ice shelf and collect samples of meteorites. Because if you find any, the idea was if you find any rocks out there with an ice shelf that thick, it's got to have fallen from the sky.
Yeah, it's got to be recent, right? Yeah.
And he's accredited for having more than half of the samples of meteorites on the planet. When we were talking to him back in the 90s, he's retired now, emeritus, and kind of old. So he's kind of left alone now, I guess, from what I've heard. But great guy, and he helped us out a lot. But his samples were he had sent it his doctoral student to the Smithsonian 3 different times to have this sample evaluated.
The one
And
you guys had, right?
Yes, the one that we have. And
okay.
They couldn't actually identify it with the samples they had there. And then Dr. Cassidy went down the 3rd time himself, and was really frustrated when he came back, and because they came back with unverified material with like 60% composite, and we were thinking at that time like 30% of unknown material. Oh wow, we're going to be in science magazines and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were no, calm yourself down. It just means that we probably don't have as many samples. We're going to send this over to NASA, and that's kind of like how we got referred over to the NASA samples, and then they did the X-ray diffraction, which like I said, it came back with verified as a Nalcine. So I'm sorry, what?
Were they able to use spectrometry and decipher what chemicals were in it?
They have there's a table that's in the paper that I submitted to the AGU. There's a table there that shows their X-ray diffraction results. It has a chart with all the numbers and the graphs of where it kind of goes off the table. It shows where the element content is, and then there's a few charted notes of like handwritten notes of where they're comparing the results to other standards, and then they kind of like circled the results, and then it matched up with the letter they sent us. So I guess they kind of like everything that they did on it they sent, but not being a geologist myself at the time, I kind of had to guess what they were doing with it.
Do you happen to recall if there is any cytosine or tegranine in it or anything like that?
That was not identified. It was just basically a Nalcine with traces of calcite.
Okay.
And so that was.
What was it? It was enough to determine that it wasn't it was not a meteorite or whatever. Correct?
Well,
is that the way I'm interpreting this?
It possibly still could be, but with it being a glassy, if it were a glassy impact, they couldn't associate it to any other glassy samples that they have, like the crater. There's a crater in Mauritania, and I never pronounce it right, but it begins with an A. OULLEOU. I can't never say a word properly, so yeah, I'm not going to try this time. But,
Ureus and cytosine and tegranine are found in meteorites,
right?
Right.
Because cytosine is what comes in a gel-like and a liquid-like state on the synaptic circuits between the neural nodes of your brain that is part of the orcho artery.
Right. Yep.
But they've actually found that in meteorites.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, they found a lot of things in meteorites that you can find in
right.
DNA.
Yeah.
There's found carbon chains out in space. So it's not like, just about anywhere you look, life's not that far away.
Hey, Robert, this is fascinating shit, man. Walk me back now and tell me how you end up, getting into geology and this kind of stuff, right?
What drew you to the electric universe theory? Like, what was it that you seen?
Yeah, what was
it
that's a good one. What was the piece? Yeah.
What got me into electric universe theory? That was that would have been just like I said. I came across my father actually came across that copy of the Remembering the End of the World, done by David Talbot, I guess, and I think it's Mythscape at the time, is the Migamar Publishing. But that just basically starts the whole idea of the Velikovsky story and the Thunderbolts of the Gods, and how our history is more based on a cataclysmic history, and not so much the uniformitarian approach that is taught with billions of years of evolution over time. It's really a chaotic one, and he had a lot of references in his books about not only biblical but steles from Mesopotamia. Then he also linked it up to a lot of South American histories.
Like link the chaos and the linked it up to that is what you're saying,
right? Yeah, and a lot of the stories, and whenever they were properly translated, you could see a lot of similarities that he would make reference to in different versions of different cultures. But there, you could see that the idea of the basically what they describe as the archetypal story is the same.
Robert, can you go? I want to ask you a favor, if you can. You don't have to, okay? Can you go deep on that subject? Because that's one of the places I keep telling Eric this. I'm like, there's like links into the stories of antiquity and the way they're interpreted, but I never remember when you guys are on to ask with Velikovsky, can you go deep on that and sort of lay that out a little more detail?
My biggest references, I guess, from off the top of my head, was when I was reading Worlds of Collisions. I actually had a copy of the book myself that I came across a few years after the VCR tape, and I actually wanted to get in deeper into what Velikovsky was saying straight, not just from David Talbot's words, but so I read the book, and I guess a lot of the biblical versions we can take, like say from the Exodus first. A lot of biblical references that he matched up to the scrolls of Ipuwer, which is the Egyptian side of it, and he said those that just blew my mind right there. There's so many references in the scrolls of Ipuwer from the Egyptians talking about basically the plagues that happened to Egypt. And then he also correlates them also to the references in the Exodus, and that just blew my mind. It was almost word for word.
Oh yeah, you'll see a same correlation in Psalms too. Basically, you can it's almost 90% Egyptian sayings from other works that the Egyptians have done. I mean, there's a huge history in religion morphing into other things, like Christianity morphs back into Judaism, Judaism morphs back into Zoroastrianism, and all these things fed into each other. So there's connections. Then the story of Noah is actually a Sumerian story that we have found on cuneiform tablets that predate the Bible by over 1,000 years. So I mean, it's a lot of those connections and stuff probably go back even a little bit more deeper than the Egyptians and the Sumerians, and they were the first. So,
right. And then it goes back, and it also kind of reinforces the idea that it's a cyclical pattern when there's a lot of chaos involved. So it kind of goes back to our geological site that you can alter the chemical processes with electrical currents, then you really don't have to set everything back so many years, millions and possibly billions of years. You can go back thousands.
Okay, so that's what you're getting at, is that
it just kind of supports it. I don't want to sit there and just say I'm going to be an absolute proponent of it, but I mean, I'm not going to say that the Earth is exactly 7,000 years old as it is biblically. I'm just saying, it could be from the point of our own creation and our existence, it could be that far, but this has been around for a while, and there's evidence of other things that have been here prior to.
Well, and it calls into question how accurate is the ruler, that we're using to measure things with. If it can be altered by electricity or electrical discharge, and we can prove that in a lab, and we can also connect that there were massive electrical discharge events on the surface of this planet, then we have to. Yeah, I think that's a fair question, right? Is there a significant resistance to this idea?
They all, from what I understand, that they're primarily sticking to impacts whenever you find any kind of craters, because they say that the shock force, that's the only thing that can create the pressures and the temperatures, and that's like their go-to. However, there is, like I said, that evidence from the University of Pennsylvania, and then there's a few other references I have in my paper that I submitted, but they're looking into it, but they don't really want to just sit out there and start saying that every one of them is, this or that.
Well, so objective science wouldn't, would it?
They're still lying on the impact theory. I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, Robert. Objective science wouldn't. It would not. It would not. It never says anything's really 100%. No. It can only derive the facts it can derive with the best instruments we have available today. That's the answer. I mean, honestly. Right. So that makes sense.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's just to be honest. You can't just sit there and say that you want to seek truth and then just be stuck with tunnel vision on one thing. That wouldn't be honest at all either. I recognize that.
I was wondering about that sort of thing too. Like, there's certainly, and I've talked with Gareth about this too, about how there are a lot of, just as an example, there's a lot of different theories on what gravity is. Nobody really knows, right? It's up for grabs as to what exactly is going on. So there are people who, for whatever reason, want to follow that standard model that's been going on or whatever, and so, for instance, when waves are detected in the space-time continuum, and they're like, okay, we've discovered gravity waves, which is what Einstein predicted. Now that's just clinching it down for Einstein's description of what gravity is. One more thing, we've nailed down another nail. And then, of course, there's people who will see that in a different way, like electric universe people don't believe that there are such things as gravity waves, and that this is more an energy wave in the energy ether, as an example, and that these detectors that are being set off detecting gravity waves, that they they're not sure what they're detecting. They don't really have faith in that the thing being detected is gravity waves in particular. So
or some kind of feedback from the atmosphere.
Well, who knows?
Right. Who knows? They don't know, right? But
it's crazy.
But my point is just that there's people who gravitate toward a different explanation, not necessarily a more fantastic explanation or anything like that, really. I mean, there's nothing different about saying that it's an energy wave in the energy ether than it is saying that it's a gravitational wave in space-time. Like, both of those are, to my mind, are just as fantastic, right? It wouldn't matter to me which one won out over the other. But I'm curious, and to you personally, what is it that draws you to the electric universe ideas and theories as opposed to whatever the standard model may be about whatever the thing is? Like, what is it for you that makes you think, well, maybe this takes more looking into, and maybe you guys aren't quite looking at it right? Did you see something in there, or did you just happen to have a connection to it in some way that made it feel right, and that you want it to be in that area? Because I've had things like that.
I've actually, when I would be sitting there driving across I've driven across the country several times, and when I'd start to see different formations and erosion processes and other, like they even just say like anomalies, like erratic boulders and stuff, like what would they be doing up there, or how do they get there? What kind of processes would do this? And you start thinking about the conventional models, and it really just still doesn't make sense, but it's just their best belief, and that's what they're going with on everything. And then you start getting exposure to the electric universe process and how they can, everything can shift. Mountains can be raised, dropped, tidal waves can be altered and shifts. I mean, everything can be eroded, electroplated, or what. There's all kinds of new things that can be thrown into the mix, and that's what kind of got me going. But what kind of actually has me now is, I guess, a collective understanding for people. Because if we can sit here, I guess, with like sitting there thinking about the Sapphire Project lately, because that's like a big thing in the electric universe. If they can,
we're just starting to hear about this, by the way. Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be shows done on this very soon. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, they can sit there and take 1,800 watts and then generate, like 30,000 Kelvin. That's a quick way to boil water. We can start doing that instead of wasting trillions of dollars. It potentially was what we spent now trying to catch like neutrinos and, identify dark matter and all these, chasing ghosts, I guess, basically, and focus on like feeding people.
Yeah. Or provide. One of my biggest
hangups. Really
hangups.
Cheap version way of doing it.
Yeah, and that kind of and it's funny because we sort of had an energy conversation with Gareth the last time he was on, and that's the first time I heard about the Sapphire Project, because we were talking about things like nuclear energy. Because you're right, man. At the end of the day, it all comes down to one equation: how efficiently and cheaply can you boil water determines how cheap you make electricity. It's just kind of the way it works, it is what it is. And when he started saying he was very excited about some of the findings, because we were starting to go down the.
Well, that's a whole new page in itself, but I don't want to.
That's what I mean. I think just as a primer, it's funny to hear you. Not funny, but interesting. You're the second person now that's brought this up. And there's a lot of people that's really getting turned on kind of by this thing now. So I can't wait to see what it turns into. Are
neutrinos a part of the electric universe theory?
I think Thornhill kind of has a thing for them. He wants to either. I'm not really sure. That's not my fort.
Gotcha.
Really, I don't really get too far into it because I'll look foolish.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Man, I feel you, dude. That's me on this subject every time. It's like, I'm stupid.
Well, as someone told me when I was on my way down to the Electric Universe Conference in 2017, because like I said, I was just all the experience I have in geology with what I've learned from just the doctors that I went to, Shoemaker, Cassidy, and then a few others here in Utah. But it wasn't like I actually got into a course or read a book or anything. So I can't identify samples. I just know a few things about the overall theories of, geology, and then focus on electrical theory.
Oh, so you're like you're a super
fan.
fan.
Like a partial rock. Yeah. Like when I got exposed to this, I was just graduating high school, and my father got into this program because a marketing deal was kind of like was set back. So he kind of fell into something else right at this time. And we were going from there, because I guess we established a rapport with the founder of these rocks, Wes Hill from Moab, Utah. And he liked us so much, he gave us the marketing rights as long as we could do the legwork, because he just didn't want to go and do all that stuff.
Yeah. I understand that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is.
So-
It was more than we had
I
actually
don't
thought.
want
It's paid off. It's been a great journey, you know.
So geology for you has been something that you've constantly been sort of involved in. It's been a passion of yours since back around high school era, right? I mean, this is something. So I find people like I'm a electrical engineer. I'm not a degreed electrical engineer. I just play one on TV. Okay, I got my
I'm actually going to school to get my electronics engineering degree. I'm not in my last 2 semesters here.
Well, good for you, dude. It's awesome,
Thank you.
man.
So that's I wanted to learn more, so I used what was left of my GI Bill to go get something. So yeah.
Well, people like us, it's funny because there's a lot of us sort of lay professionals, I'll call it, that exist out here in the world. Right. Okay, and they're fun to talk to because these are the greatest people, I think, and I'm going to be prejudiced here in that way, okay? Because these are people that are in it because they freaking love it. Like they can't not be in it, right? Even if they don't have a degree in it, they're still in it, kind of thing. And so when you find people that are that turned on by a subject, man, generally they've got some fascinating freaking information, you know,
and they're very well read. I mean, they may not have a degree, but they probably have their own library and they're stored away in their head.
Well, because what they have is the equivalent in real world experience, and that is something that you know, in academia sort of gets poo-pooed and shit on. But when you get out into the really real world where people pay money for shit, turns out not a big deal. Actually, they prefer that. You know, it's like, oh, okay, cool. So, but anyway, so this is for you. Geology is a passion for you. It's not just something you know. Your parents said you're going to go do this, and you went, I'm going to go do that, mom and dad, and this is something that you've been involved in out of fondness and like I said, you're kind of like a super fan in a sense. So. So give me some of this stuff, man, that these are things that you've been able to be involved in and things that keeps you coming back to this.
Like I said, I was invited to participate in Electric Universe 2017 in Phoenix, and that kind of like got everything jump started. That's where I got to meet Neil and Susan and Walt Thornhill and David Talbot, and I was a fan of Talbot ever since, like I said, when I got out of high school, I was watching that VHS tape, and then just to find out that it's a movement and it's a worldwide movement, and that energized me, and I was so excited to get down to Phoenix and to meeting everybody there, and then actually to stay in touch with everybody through the Electric View conversations. It's been great, and I've considered myself to be really blessed to be a part of it because I wasn't really doing much prior to that. I was just really banged up by the economy tanking, and it was in an area where there wasn't much employment. So this kind of provided an opportunity to
use some time constructively,
someone
kind of thing,
entrepreneurial, if not at just exposing what I've done and just getting the information out there and just making a lot of friends along the way.
So that's in a particular case where meeting your heroes actually turned out to be a good thing, huh?
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
Not like generally they tell you don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Right.
But in this particular case, it has a different connotation. So, okay, so this is now everybody in this or that I've spoken with. I should quantify that. This is something they pursue. I'll say extracurricularly, or they do it in addition to something else they do. But everybody that I've found in this so far is in or has experience in super technical backgrounds, especially as it relates to electric and electronics. Now, that does how your connection to this though is coming from an electrical sort of standpoint, regardless. Right. Even though now your background, is it specifically geology? I think you were in the military. We talked about that.
Yeah, I was in the military. And like I said, I was just a bit of a rock hound just because I got involved with this rock early in life, fresh out of high school.
Yep.
And but then, like I said, when all the results came back from the NASA Space Center Johnson, that it wasn't confirmed as a meteorite. It really just sat there for like 10 years. And in between that time is when I was in the military, came back, went to school, the economy tanked.
Yeah, everybody got nicked by that.
Couldn't do anything. So yeah, I was sitting there. And it wasn't until, like I said, I saw in 2015 that I saw that one Thunderbolts podcast that I just took a picture of one of the rock samples that I have, and it was just one of the weirdest ones I have because it actually has like a depression inside of it with these two like geonodes side of it with a little bit of the analcime material dripped in between. So it was, you could tell it was molten at some stage. and something weird happened to this. So I sent pictures off to it, and that's when they wanted to send it off to their senior geologists, who were Bruce Laybourne and Andy Hall. And I got to started talking to them, and was looking forward to meeting them at the conference. And I think it was Andy that had said to me that we're all, laypersons in the electric universe, because it's a brand new theory.
Right.
We're all learning it by ourselves. So even though we have doctorates or, pretty pictures on the wall with stickers and stamps on them,
right,
we're all learning something new here. So all the input and feedback is, necessary and invited.
Yeah, the community at large seems to be tremendous in that way. Yeah, everybody's like, hey, we're just kind of figuring this out as we're going along here. So, if you've got an idea, feel free to interject. Okay, so I know that from Ramon Cariaga that there seems to be a tremendous amount now, especially with that would have geological implications happening in the discussion of the electric universe theory, because I keep seeing it pop up. Is there anything new that you're pursuing to that end or working on with the group?
I've just been focusing on that because I have a vested interest, and we're trying to open up a store. So I'm pretty much going to do that. I may try to get involved with some writing of some papers with the larger area of the southwestern United States.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a different paper, but that would be, like I said, have to involve more people. Try to get maybe Bruce involved. I know he's doing some work with some other people right now. So,
well, these are.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, so you're talking about how you'd mentioned this earlier too. So you guys are now taking these pieces and turning them into art pieces?
Oh yeah, we have a few. We've cut them and shaped them into some like shadow bears, sculpture pieces. We have pyramids, obelisks, spheres for like desk pieces.
Okay.
And then we also have the slabs that are cut out, so you can see some of the outer crust, and then and also the faces that we polished. And we also have an artist that's the niece of the rock founder. She's a very good artist, and she does like landscape pictures. She'll do animal faces, pictures on that. She'll also do some of the petroglyphs. If we can do custom work. If you want to send in pictures, she can do that, and she does pretty well work, and we just charge for
So people can actually own a piece of this anomaly, air quotes, right?
That's what we're trying to get to, yes. But we've run into some cutting problems, because it's hard to find rock cutters in America anymore. Because I guess there aren't any.
There just aren't any.
There's
right.
a few that are left are on so much on back order, because most people now just send it to either Mexico or China or right on the Southeast Asia. But this stuff is so rare, and we don't want to lose all the scrap pieces, which most of them will take, because then we only have like a truckload of this stuff. There's only 2 sites that we found on the planet over 30 years of scouring the area. West. So there's not that much, and we don't want to send it off, at that kind of a cost, and then just throw that off to the customer. So we've been running into some issues about how to reach the supply chain. So that's what we're kind of dealing with, and that's why we haven't released it yet to the public full scale yet.
Okay, so that's something that's going to be coming up. That's something we can come back. You can come back and talk to us about too.
All right, yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
When that happens, count me in, man, because I'm interested in this now, because this is something that's extremely rare. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So it's anything that's rare is interesting. I mean, it just is.
It's extremely rare. So they said it's rare and unique. I mean, it's not like anything I've ever seen.
Right.
Whatever it was, they can't say that it's a now seen now, but whatever it was, and that right there suggests some possible, suggestion to transmutation of elements, because whatever it was before, it ain't it now.
Which is kind of at the heart of what the Sapphire Project does for the universe.
Exactly. That's kind of what they kind of fell into. They were trying to prove the electric sun model, but they've started finding evidences of possible transmutation.
Yeah.
I don't describe too much, because then that's taken away from their work.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got to be somebody that's I got to get someone that's directly involved in that project when they're ready to announce.
I've seen what they've said in a few snippets of what the EU 2019 and the conference there in Bath just occurred.
Yeah.
I've seen a few tidbits from their own talks, but I don't want to go into too much conjecture of what I could presume from what they were saying. I could go on forever, and I don't want to do that. That wouldn't be fair to them.
So, Where sort of wrapping up, where would you direct somebody who's kind of coming in like Eric and I, they're kind of new to this? Hey, if you want to really take a deep dive in this electric universe theory stuff, where would you direct people to that?
I would say start off at the beginning. I mean, the Thunderbolts project has on their websites, they have a few beginner videos on YouTube that you can check just to get the basic concept of electric universe and electrical theory about how the cosmos works. And then if you're still, if that still captures you, then go into a little bit lengthier podcast. I mean, a video of the thunderbolts of the gods or the symbols of the alien sky. If you're interested more in the histories of how the electricity affected people, as opposed to the science of it,
right?
The physics. If you're interested more in the physics and the astronomy, then go to the thunderbolts of the gods. If you like the anthropology, astronomy, the history references and symbols of the alien sky, and from there you can go to any. After that, you go to everything electrocosmology with the weather, grand solar minimums, possible Sapphire project, of course, if you're looking in the really hardcore live stream today physics of what they're doing, and that's some mind-blowing stuff right there. That could be a good start.
All right, buddy. So are there Facebook groups, YouTube channels, anything that you have that
there
we
are
need
several
to let people know about?
Facebook groups. There's pretty much, you can type in electric universe and then anything that has a scientific discipline to it: biology, archaeology, well, not chemistry, because that's under the structured atom model. Like I said earlier, that is the actual theory that the nucleus of the atoms are actually structured through a platonic solid formation and electromagnetism. So you really don't have to get into the quantum mechanic fields in this model.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much laid out a new periodic table of the elements based on this model, and it's really, really cool. You should check out. It's on etherealmatters.org is the website, and it's very informative and really new info. Definitely up for EU theory. I support it.
All right, man. One of the things I always try to do is give every guest a chance to sort of talk about how, or if do you have anything yourself that any groups, promotions, anything like that you need to get
I guess,
out there?
like I said,
you
type in pretty much anything electric universe and then any kind of discipline. I'm on the electric universe geology page on Facebook. I'm one of the admins there, and also I'm an admin on the structured atom model, because we're basically it's Ito's site. He's carrying it over from Michael Steinbacher, who's basically one of the pioneers of electric universe geology. And this is all basically to honor his memory, because he passed a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
And with my, I met Ito at the 2017 conference, and with my passion for the geology and my free time at the time, he said, "Why don't you just manage the Facebook accounts for us here so we can actually focus on the science stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." And I kind of got, at the same time, I got to learn a lot from them. So that's kind of what I wanted to do it for, was to learn more of their theories.
That's awesome.
So it's a great position I feel like I got myself into.
All right, man. Eric, you got any other questions?
I don't believe I do. None that wouldn't take another hour to talk about.
Robert, anything else you want to make sure we get out there before we wrap up here, bud?
Not that I can think of, but I definitely wanted to say thanks again for having me on your show. I think, again, it was for giving me this opportunity to get the information out there. I do appreciate it.
No problem, man. You guys are all fascinating, and big shout out to Sherfu Ramon Cariaga again, because he just continues to give me great guests, and you are no exception.
Thanks to Sherfu and to Neil, because they turned me on to your show, and that's when I started listening. I think when you had Neil on the first couple times, and I started listening to that show, and I became a fan of the show through that. So
got to get Neil back
thanks
on.
To them, man. Thanks to you again.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for listening, everyone. Check us out at www.noshitcast.com. It's KNOWSHITCAST.com. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you, especially Eric, who's a freak. Make sure you give us a rating on iTunes, etc. If you like what we do, give us a share. We'd really appreciate it. We'll catch you all next time. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye, Siggles. That's how we do it, buddy.